Great news. There's a quick way you can save money. Switch to Geico. Geico could help you get great coverage at a great price. And it only takes 15 minutes to see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010.
Welcome into the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. We missed you. You know us. It's the usual crew. I am Field Yates with Matthew Berry and Star Fania Bell. Stefania, good afternoon. I'm going to start there. Be the gentleman.
Well, you are. You're always the gentleman, Field. I never have to worry about that. How are you? Are you enjoying your summer vacation?
I enjoyed my summer vacation, Stefania. I've been spending some time on Nantucket, which is great. I'm now less than a year away from getting married, which is awesome. And I've been following the two of you in your adventures on Instagram. Matthew, you seem to be having some fun.
You mean some fun how? Like just watching Stefania steal my wife?
Yes.
Stefania with my wife in Vegas, Stefania with my wife on the beach. The whole thing is super annoying. Coming up today on the show, we've got a lot to get to. So we have got some big announcements, about the shows, some big announcements about how you can see us, big announcements of how you can hang out with us.
Correct.
Big announcements about other big announcements. And then we've actually got football news. Obviously, there have been some suspensions.
Yes.
One of them broken by our own Field Yates. So big news there. We'll talk about Edelman. We'll talk about Winston. And there's been some kind of middle of the road, if you will, snoozy kind of nuggets that you may have missed. And we'll talk about whether they are important or not. And we all took place in a mock draft a couple of days ago.
That's right.
Where I crushed you guys like a grape. So we will talk about your egos and your psyches, how you guys are rebounding from the fact that already, you're kind of my business.
Rewind. Fantasy news from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
Now, Daniel, I have a question for you, Secret Squirrel.
The answer is no. I don't need to hear the rest of it.
No, so the question is that when we go live on Twitter, which is one of our announcements, that starting July 30th, this show will be broadcast live on Twitter. You can
every single weekday.
Right. You can follow us at Fantasy Focus. Obviously, follow all of us individually. You can mute Field and Stefania, but just make sure you got me. And but if you follow at Fantasy Focus as well, it'll be live on Twitter. You can watch us do all this. So my question to you, Secret Squirrel, is when we are broadcasting live on Twitter, and just so you know, the audio podcast is still going to be the same. You'll still be able to stream it, to download it, everything that you normally do. It's just yet another way to enjoy, and I'm being very loose with that word, to enjoy the four of us. But my question to you is, when we are live on Twitter, is a word like allowed, or are you going to have to bleep that?
No, that's definitely not allowed.
Interesting.
So this is, since we're going live on Twitter July 30th, this is one of the last podcasts I have a chance to say word like.
Yes, that is.
Daniel's bleep button won't get very much use. Although I got to tell you something,
yes,
whether
sir.
it's words or images or visuals, I have a hard time sometimes wondering. I would not have known whether that word had been permitted. And here's the reason why I was thinking about this.
Yeah,
the ESPN body issue, the 10th edition of it came out, and Saquon Barkley's rear is very much like out there in the open. You know, like there might have been a time where I wasn't sure whether or not a rump would be permitted to be seen on the front page of ESPN.com or ESPN the magazine.
His butt, his tuchus, his
gluteus maximus.
No, Matthew.
Wait,
No.
See? Yeah.
There's a line, and you always just know how to go just a little bit too far past it.
So did I just fuck everything up? Is that what happened?
Field, why don't you tell us about some other stuff?
On July 30th, as Matthew noted earlier, we're going live every single day on Twitter, and of course, the usual podcast format for those who like to listen to it in the car, when you're mowing your lawn, whatever it is that you need to find 1 hour to yourself a day.
You're having sex with your significant other. Is that allowed?
Are you allowed to do that?
No.
Yes,
is saying the
you
words
can.
having sex allowed?
Matthew, I'm not sure.
You can find us on Twitter at Fantasy Focus. That handle will be much more active and robust in terms of content as we get closer and closer to the season.
I'm getting it all out of my system today.
We have noticed, Matthew, we also have live shows. This is very, very exciting news. In the past, we have been to, amongst other places, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C.
Houston, Texas.
Now, this year, we are expanding our horizons to the West Coast, Los
The best
Angeles.
coast.
Los Angeles, we are coming to you. We do not have a specific date laid out as of yet or a venue at this time, but I can promise you this. We are nearing the goal line, and when we have that information, it will be distributed immediately to you, the best fans in the world. Stefania, I know how excited you are to head home.
I am. I have been pressing for a West Coast stop for the show pretty much since we started doing live shows, and let me tell you, I'm very excited. All you West Coast fans who have been asking, when are you going to bring the show to the West Coast, just know that I've been working hard behind the scenes.
This is true,
trying to convince all my co-hosts that it would be great fun to travel to the West Coast.
Whoa.
And yes.
Not trying to convince your co-host, because I was on board with this. I'm from L.A. I love L.A. I'm like Randy Newman. I love L.A. But I am saying to you, Stefania Bell, you have been talking to the powers that be, the suits, the muckety mucks, the people in their offices, the paper pushers, if you will, about getting us out to the West Coast. So it is Los Angeles. It is not specifically Stefania's home, which we know is San Francisco, but we will be in Los Angeles, the city of angels, the city of stars. Maybe Field Yates, you will be finally discovered. We are also going back to the Big Apple.
That's correct, Matthew Barry, New York City, where our first live show ever was conducted. A venue is TBA. But when we have that information, we will give it to you.
Yeah, but it's coming soon. I'd block off the first week of August if I was in the West Coast. We can't announce the date or venue just yet, but again, it'll be early in August. Now,
one more important piece of news. We are huge supporters, for those who don't know. If you listen to the podcast, you do know this already. We are huge supporters in the fight against cancer. So we are teaming up with the V Foundation.
Yeah, cancer.
That actually might be allowed.
Is that
Matthew Berry. He's Matthew Berry. He's Matthew Berry.
I'm actually okay with that if it is permitted. So coming
it should be.
Coming July 8th, you can bid to win at bid to win at ebay.com/ESPN with all donations benefiting the V Foundation. What are you bidding on? It's a package that will allow you to come and hang out with us, the podcast crew, meet us, and beyond that, you can have a draft conducted right here in Bristol.
So this is a cool thing. So basically, look, you're on your own for travel costs. Okay. Yep. You're on your own. But basically, like, you know how a lot of leagues out there, like, where should we go? Are we going to Vegas? Are we going to Florida? Are we going to Nashville? Farmington. Where are we going? All the cool cities.
If you're coming from Farmington.
Sometimes
we'll
you get
provide
lost.
a map.
Right, exactly. So, a lot of leagues like to go to somewhere cool, and maybe you don't go, but this is a very cool experience where you and your 9, 11, 15 other league mates, it's up to 16 people are allowed. You guys can come to ESPN headquarters. You can literally draft your fantasy football league this year at the worldwide leader in sports. And myself, Field, Stefania, and Secret Squirrel will be there to draft, to see you guys draft. We will help run your draft. I'll do the stickers. I don't care. Secret Squirrel will serve you, Secret Squirrel will serve you sandwiches. Stefania will give you massages. She'll rub your back to make sure you're not being too tense. Field will make sure you're all dressed sharp. Or something. I don't know what Field will do. We'll figure something out for Field.
Wow.
Hair product.
You really sold that one hard.
Yes.
Yeah, you really sold that one hard. Come to the draft and Field will do something.
I don't know. What you want to do the stickers? We can do the I'll pick off the stickers. Like someone will say Saquon Barkley, and I'll find the Saquon Barkley sticker and hand it to you, and then you can take the sticker and put it like by team 5 or whatever.
That works.
There
team
you go.
5.
You and I will tag team the stickers, my friend.
I'll help with hair, stickers, and team names. I like team names.
Done and done. The fact of the matter is that all you guys will come here. You'll sit in on a podcast with us. You'll get a tour of ESPN, and you get
photo with us.
Photo, the whole thing. You know, I'm sure we'll find you some swag as well. So it's a really cool thing. And by the way, now get all the people in your league. You guys pony up for this. So it's a great, we think it's a pretty cool prize. And most importantly, of course, it is to help fight cancer research. It's the Jimmy V Foundation. It is the best.
It is definitely not that. It is not correct. It is not fighting cancer research.
It's fighting cancer. It's research. It's
supporting cancer research.
All the money goes toward cancer research. Every bit of the donation.
100% of donations go towards fighting cancer. Much like I fight the English language.
Right.
That would be factually correct.
So anyway, I believe the Jimmy V Foundation and the support that this company gives is the best thing this company does, bar none.
Completely 100% on board. Now, in non-ESPN function-related news, but tied to the three of us, Matthew, Stefania, and myself.
Whoa. There's a second thing that they can
Jimmy V
bid on.
Foundation thing?
That's
and I promise we're getting to football soon.
My apologies.
That's all right.
I thought this was the one whole kit and caboodle. But you can also bid on the possibility to be in part or take part in a live taping of the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast, which of course is us, our show. You can come watch us toe the line. At least Matthew will toe the line. Stefania will give good insight. And I'll be there doing something because I have undefined responsibilities in this podcast, according to Matthew.
Hey, don't be you're fine. Come on now.
Maverage can also join.
You are arguably the best host of this podcast.
Why, thank you. Well, I have 1 in 3 chance. You can also have the opportunity to join the Men's or Women's League. We know those are very coveted spots throughout the year. And we also know that we say there is a hard and fast, no monetary value rule to try to get yourself into the Men's or Women's League. But if you're ever going to bend the rule to potentially involve the idea of money, like, this is a worthwhile investment that should yield a spot in the Men's or Women's League.
You've wanted to play in the league. You want to come visit us. You want to hang out. You don't have a lot of league mates that you like. You don't want to share the ESPN HQ with them. I get it. So here, a tax-deductible donation, as long as it's the most, gets you here with us, visiting the podcast. We'll get you some swag, and you get to be in the Men's or Women's League, depending on whatever gender you are.
And
that's with a guest as well. You get to bring a guest.
Bring a guest with you, significant other, whoever it may be. Now I mentioned an event that is not ESPN organized, but
Correct.
It involves the three of us. We're going to go to the NFFC, which is National Fantasy Football Conference. This year, it is in July. It is on July 13th through 15th in Fort Worth, which is like basically Dallas, Texas.
Yeehaw!
A lot of names will be there. A ton of big names. I'm not talking about like Matthew Berry level. I'm talking like NFL players, like former Dallas Cowboys and present Dallas Cowboys. And the list is basically a who's who of NFL stars.
It's really a cool event. So the three of us will be there along with some other fantasy experts. It is a fantasy football and fan convention. So Melvin Gordon, LaShawn McCoy, Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliott, lots of other former NFL players as well. Chris Thompson. My little Chris Thompson from my beloved Washington Redskins. Kenyon Drake's going to be there. Michael Irvin, our new colleague Jason Witten will be there.
Nice.
Pat Mahomes,
Yep.
Jerick McKinnon, Stefania of your 49ers.
That's right.
Ronald Jones, Kenyon Drake, I think I mentioned.
Yeah.
Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones from the Packers. So it's a whole list of people there. So check it out at gonffc.com. Again, the 13th through the 15th, the three of us will be there along with a lot of other really terrific and smart fantasy analysts as well. You can use the promo code Yates or the promo code Barry.
Yep. To get some money off.
And get a discount to your ticket if you could go to gonffc.com. Cannot wait to do it. I was there last year, guys. It is a great event. Really fun. Lots of stuff to do. Lots of access to the players, to us. Great panels as well, and a lot of fun things. It's very family friendly too. A lot of people brought their kids. It's a good time. And I'm looking forward to going back again, July 13th through the 15th, Fort Worth, Texas.
I hear great food as well.
No doubt.
We'll be right back with plenty of football news.
Washing my nose, oh yeah.
I'm a shower curtain, and I do one thing, keep water from leaking everywhere. So you see why I feel useless compared to Geico, who does so much more. Like, not only could Geico save you money, but they've been around for over 75 years. And they give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or on the Geico app. And they've got a 97% customer satisfaction rating. They do all this while I have to listen to this chucklehead. Oh, good, he stopped.
Washing my toes.
Oh, great, an encore.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Lots of NFL news to get to, beginning with a star wide receiver for the New England Patriots. We are taping this podcast on Monday, June 25th, and Julian Edelman today has his appeal of a 4-game suspension for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substances policy. Matthew, I'll ask you this. What was your initial reaction when you heard this news about Edelman and what it meant for him, Tom Brady, and the rest of the Patriots offense?
Well, my first reaction was, good job, Field. You and I had been texting about an hour before you broke this, saying, and he feels like, I'm working on something, trying to get this story past the goal line, but some pretty big NFL news. And so first off, kudos to you. I know you and Adam broke that together.
Thank you.
So yeah, our little Field Yates, Scoop Yates over there.
Scoop Yates. Follow me on Twitter at Field Yates.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow him on Twitter at Field Yates. Really fucking impressive. Just want to tell you that right now. Just really, really impressive. And so my second reaction was, the fantasy piece of it was, dang it, because I kept thinking Chris Hogan has been undervalued this year. And I thought, well, this is going to raise his value, because I think if anyone, to the extent that there is a benefit to anyone, and to your point, Julian is appealing it, so we will see if the 4-game suspension holds up. But my thought was that this is going to boost up Chris Hogan's ADP, which I thought was too low at the time.
So let's just get into the rankings portion, because a lot of people are wondering, with 4 games missed for Edelman, how high can you possibly draft this player? And he has slipped to 32nd in our wide receiver rankings, Matthew. I believe pre-suspension he was much closer to about 18 or so in the wide receiver rankings. Right. Understanding he's coming off of the ACL tear, but with over a full year before the start of this regular season, all indications to Fania would be that he would be 100%.
Well, yeah, and all the reports of what he was doing as far as working out and how he looked, even before really we hit the complete off season, were that he looked really good. So I would be prepared from a physical standpoint for him to be ready to play.
But he's always injured, Stefania. And make no mistake, Julian Edelman's as tough as they come. But injuries have dogged him throughout his career, I feel like. One of the reasons why I have him at wide receiver 35, so I'm even lower on him than the consensus. Not just the 4-game suspension, but also the lack of touchdowns. He's not a particularly big red zone threat. He had the 1 year, but generally speaking, he's a guy he's like a 3 or 4 touchdown a year guy. And they have so many weapons there, and Brady spreads it around so much, and I know he's like his go-to guy. But for me, Edelman's like a solid, safe PPR guy, but it is rare that Edelman's ever going to win you a week. And as we talk about range of outcomes, he's just not a guy that I'm willing to draft higher than I think where he will go.
So I think here's where it gets interesting. Prior to this suspension news, there were 2 Patriots wide receivers that were safely and justifiably going to be drafted in probably every league. Edelman and Chris Hogan. We talked about them. And both of them will still be drafted and still be utilized on a near weekly basis. As a matter of fact, Chris Hogan could be a weekly starter in standard sized leagues. That's 100%. Not at flex, like a standard top 20 wide receiver. But where it gets interesting is this. Has a third Patriots wide receiver role become viable enough that you could possibly see taking a late round flyer on someone like, amongst others, Malcolm Mitchell, Jordan Matthews, Kenny Britt, Cordarrelle Patterson? Or is the point that there are too many other options at wide receiver basically said, none of them are better than a dart throw, you might as well stay away?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Is the correct answer to your response.
Way
there.
To be specific.
Thanks, Stefania. Yeah. Appreciate that. Look, the fact of the matter is could one of them reemerge? Of course. Yeah. Anytime you're on the field with Tom Brady, positive things can obviously happen. And so do I think that offense is prolific enough to sustain a number 3 fantasy wide receiver, even with a healthy Rob Gronkowski? I do. But as we sit here today on June, whatever today is.
25th, yep.
Thanks, June 25th. I don't feel like that there is anyone that I feel confident that person is going to be. If we see towards, you could see somebody getting significant snaps, whether it's in the preseason or, after a couple of games. Okay. But, I see a lot of talk of Jordan Matthews is slot guy. And I'm just like, I don't mind a late round dart throw on Jordan Matthews, but for the 4 games that Edelman is out, Tom Brady needs trust. You know what I mean? And so it's going to be Gronk, it's going to be Hogan, and it's going to be the running backs. I think you'll see, and remains to be seen how much they're going to trust Sony Michel in the passing game initially, but you'll have James White, you'll have Rex Burkhead, maybe you'll see Sony Michel some as well, in terms of the passing game, specifically. So I can't imagine starting Jordan Matthews in those first 4 games.
Yeah, we'll see. Now, things could change if we get a much better feel for this passing offense during training camp and the preseason.
Where did you rank Edelman, just real quickly?
I've got him at 31.
Yeah, so I have him at 35.
30, excuse me. 30.
Okay, and I have I have Chris Hogan at 26. Where do you have Hogan?
I have Edelman at 29 and Hogan at 30. So, I'm having a hard time reading these columns here because I have poor vision.
Understood.
I think it's close. I think it's also possible that when Edelman returns, even in 12 games, that he could push for 85 catches.
That's entirely possible, but
so PPR just a freak.
Look, and Hogan struggled with injuries as well. But in games last year when he got over 5 targets, he averaged 17 fantasy points a game. I mean, there were only 4 wide receivers last year who averaged 17 points a game.
When he got hot last year, he was all about the touchdowns, though. That's the only reason, I said, I've given you 2 separate outcomes here, right? Like I said, it could be a top 20 wide receiver. 100%. I've also said that I like Edelman slightly more.
I say at the end of the year, Chris Hogan has more fantasy points than Julian Edelman.
I say at the end, that's tough. It's 4 games.
4 games. It is 4 games.
I'm obviously on a per game basis.
You have Edelman ranked higher.
I know, but again, that's the idea that like Edelman plus 4 games of somebody else could be more valuable than just 16 games of Chris Hogan.
You should be able to revisit this board bet because you're going to have potentially a different outcome as soon as they make a decision on the appeal.
I'll do this for you.
Yeah.
Even if Edelman gets his suspension completely done, I'd still prefer Chris Hogan because I think he's got a better chance at scoring. I say Chris Hogan finishes with a higher points per game average this year than Julian Edelman.
Now you're speaking my language. I say Julian Edelman has a higher points per game average than Chris Hogan in 2018. Put it on the board!
Put it on the board.
We need a physical board.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, buddy. All right, let's move along.
I just want to ask one question really fast.
Yeah. Tom Brady's value?
No. I want to know, Matthew, what is your vision? What are you?
I'm 2020.
But, so is this the one area?
Hang on. But I wear contacts. Without contacts, I'm legally blind.
That's not okay. I was trying to find the one spot where maybe you were better than Field.
I'm 2800. I'm literally 2800 with stigmatism, and I'm colorblind. I'm dangerously close to legally blind without contacts.
That explains a lot of your fashion choices.
Really does.
Moving on.
No, I mean, like and I'm old, right? So I mean, it's just like I do, like when I go to restaurants. If anyone out there is ever lucky enough to eat with me,
you bring your readers with you.
I don't bring the readers.
I turns on the flashlight on his phone.
It's a flashlight. We've all been there.
I do pull out the flashlight on my phone.
Don't you remember a fancy dinner in Washington? Right. There's Matthew with the spotlight, the beam.
Yeah. Matthew studies menus online before he goes to restaurants.
But you know what? It's really good is keep it dark when he's paying the bill for you and I.
Yeah. Good point. It's a good point. Either that or have a handful of IPAs before you get there. Yeah. All right, moving along to the other big news that we got in regards to a player being suspended. Jameis Winston, Buccaneers quarterback, is facing a 3-game suspension. This stems from an incident that I believe took place in 2016 involving an Uber driver and potential sexual abuse. We have learned a lot about this case over the past handful of days. As of right now, what we are expecting, again, this is June 25th, he will have a 3-game suspension. Neither Edelman nor Winston's suspensions have been announced by the NFL officially.
Right.
But we expect these to end up in those ways. So, Jameis Winston was already a quarterback 2 by our rankings, Matthew. I mean, can you even roster him?
Undraftable. Yeah. Look, in a deeper 2-quarterback league, I get it. But for me, undraftable in any QB1 league.
Yep.
I have him at 22. I moved him to 22. I mean, he was already, to your point, he was already a lower tier guy. And he actually played better last year than I think the numbers indicate.
Yeah.
And my expectation was that he would take another step forward this year. However, missing 3 games and the position is so deep, like you're not starting him. And then it's also worth noting, right? Tampa Bay has a bye in week 5.
Yeah.
And then in week 6, he's at Chicago. And that Vic Fangio defense, especially at home last year, was so good. 7th fewest quarterback points allowed last season. So honestly, there's one game in the first 6 where you would even, where Winston would even be considered starting. Like, I just don't know how. So now you're literally talking about week 7 before you ever think about wanting you to use him.
How about this? Let me ask this, because I don't know that many people were even considering Jameis Winston as a starting level quarterback in a single quarterback league.
Right.
Maybe though, the people that have him in a dynasty league are saying to themselves, there was a time where I
have him in a dynasty league.
And there was probably a time where you felt like he was a crown jewel.
Sure.
In terms of quarterbacks in dynasty, right?
Yeah.
For dynasty purposes,
I took him over Mariota the year they both came out in Dynasty.
So, but you imagine other quarterbacks that are of that sort of age range, right? Somewhere between 21 and 25 years old, which are considered, again, those are like your foundation pieces if you started the Dynasty League. Like, I'm not even sure Jameis Winston is in the same zip code as some of these other young quarterbacks for dynasty purposes.
I'm actually more of a Winston believer than not.
Interesting. Like starting from scratch, like would he be a top 10 dynasty quarterback for you? You know, I know that's obviously offhand, but you're talking about Dak, Carson Wentz. You're talking about potential. I would think like
Watson,
Matthew Stafford,
Deshaun Watson. Listen, there's
Patrick Mahomes, like that. Yeah, Derek Carr, like a lot of young quarterbacks that
I think in Dynasty I would prefer him over Derek Carr. I would prefer him.
Even Jared Goff.
Oh boy, that's
Jimmy Garoppolo. Like you've got a lot of quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's Stefania just. I don't know what that noise was.
Yeah,
sigh.
I don't know what that.
There are a lot of young quarterbacks that I think are at least much more firmly in that conversation. Where there was a time where you said like, I'm not drafting Jameis Winston as a rookie because I expect him to be my redraft league quarterback, but he was a potential the foundation of your dynasty league team for quite some time.
By the way, I misspoke very quickly. Just want to recap. First three games. Winston is suspended for. Week 4, he's at Chicago. So the first game back, you probably wouldn't want to start him at Chicago. Week 5 is his bye week. So not until week 6 when he is at Atlanta.
Right.
That would be the first, I don't know that you even love that. Week 7, he's home against Cleveland. There you go. But yeah, so I get what you mean. Like it certainly hurts his value a little bit here. But the one thing I will say is part of the problem, frankly, is that part of the problem is that the quarterback position is so deep. But I will say that I thought Winston actually played better, especially down the stretch, than I thought he got credit for.
He did, and he was hurt, obviously. Yeah. But we'll see how the offense takes shape without him for the first 3 games. We expect...
But it doesn't... Does it affect Mike Evans for you at all?
I was just going to say, we expect Ryan Fitzpatrick to be the quarterback, and I think the questions really come down to, what does it mean for Mike Evans, the only Tampa Bay wide receiver that you are 100% drafting? Obviously, Deshaun Jackson or Chris Godwin could be drafted, but Mike Evans is a legitimate first-round caliber player. I'm not so sure that it bothers me that much, Matthew, for his value, and the numbers sort of bear it out, right? I mean... Part of the strength of the Tampa Bay offense is under Dirk Cutter, they want to be a vertically inspired offense. And Kyle provided this note from 2015 to 2017, which is the window of Jameis' career. 27.1% of his attempts have traveled at least 15 yards, with 36.7% of his passing yards and 37.7% of his touchdown passes coming on those passes. Let's flip that over to Ryan Fitzpatrick. 26.7% of his attempts as opposed to 27.1%, with 38.3% of his passing yards as opposed to 36.7%, and 36% as opposed to 37.7% of his touchdown passes. My point is this. On these downfield throws, they've been very, very similar. Jameis is a better player, but from a fantasy standpoint, it hasn't impacted him that much.
No, it hasn't. It's worth noting that Greg Auman, who covers the team for the Tampa Bay Times, does a good job. He believes Ryan Griffin has a major opportunity. That's a quote, major opportunity to pass Ryan Fitzpatrick on the depth chart and start for the Buccaneers. I'll be candid. I haven't seen a lot of Ryan Griffin tape. I don't have any great sense of what he is or what he would be here, except for the fact that they are going to funnel targets and passes to Mike Evans, who's 6'6", remains a huge red zone target. Listen, is the offense as efficient without Jameis Winston? No. Might there be slight scoring differences? Yeah, possibly. And, per our friend Graham Barfield on Twitter, Evans last year in 2017 was targeted 20% by Ryan Fitzpatrick, 24% by Jameis Winston. So I get it. It's maybe slightly less target share, slightly worse quarterback. But he's still a number 1 wide receiver. To me, it doesn't really affect his draft stock.
I'm with you there. I still like Mike Evans as a legit number 1 wide receiver.
100%.
Spinning things to a different topic here, Stefania. Andrew Luck is finally spinning a football. For a long time, we'd asked you for an update when there really wasn't an update. It feels like now maybe we have some sort of tangible step forward, but do we?
Absolutely you do. I mean, we all talked about it. It was big news the day that he was actually spotted throwing a football in practice. There was a lot of conversation about the size of the football. Obviously slightly different regulation size football for high school, college versus NFL. I think Andrew Luck addressed those questions, been throwing different size footballs. Yes, he has thrown an NFL regulation size football, just not in front of people, when they were wrapping up those OTAs. But the good news is that he's been throwing for a couple of weeks. And to me, I got asked to talk about this on NFL Live about what was the difference now, or was there something that was different? And to me, something that doesn't get enough credit in the return to play world for athletes is the confidence. Because that is a big part of coming back from a huge injury, especially when you consider that Andrew Luck, when he returns, will have missed almost 2 years of football. And you saw last year an apprehensive Andrew Luck. You saw that he was uncomfortable. He went away from the team for a while. He disappeared to Europe to extend his rehab, went and worked with throwing mechanics coaches in California. But the biggest difference is the way he's approaching this. There's no I don't know. No hesitation. He's out there doing stuff. He's speaking much more aggressively about being ready for the start of the season. And while that might seem like it's just talk, and yes, he has steps to take to get between throwing a football in practice and returning to action, this is actually an important part of injury recovery, and it's actually been studied more and more in sports medicine recently, is how is the mental approach for a player coming back from injury. So I think this is a big deal. I really liked what I saw from him towards the end of those OTAs and doing the throwing, et cetera. And the plan is for him to be ready to throw in camp, and we'll see what happens. He needs to be out in game action. I still think you can get a rusty Andrew Luck in week 1, even if he plays, because it's been so long since he's been playing. But I think that could ramp up very, very quickly.
Matthew, a decent amount to digest there. And not a lot of people are drafting on June 25th. So I'm not asking you at the moment, how specifically would you approach a draft with Andrew Luck in it? But I guess I would say this. Stefania just said you need to see him in game action. When does your confidence start to tilt back to same old Andrew Luck? What do you need to see? Preseason games? Full practices?
Well, it would start with throwing a real football. That's the first thing I need to see. I need to see him throw a real football.
And he has. You just haven't seen it.
I understand, but it feels asking what I need to see.
Yeah, okay,
with
Mr.
that 2800 vision,
right? You're fucking right.
Okay.
Is that allowed, Daniel?
No.
Just can you do me a favor? Can you keep a list of what words are allowed on Twitter?
I got a long list right now.
And what aren't?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. So he's going to throw a real football in camp. Let's move on from there.
Hang on for a second. Are you being sarcastic? I'm just curious. Is that what's going on?
Nope.
Don't talk sass to me.
That one you're allowed to say. That one
Am I really?
Yeah, you can say that one.
You should believe it anyway. I probably wouldn't have said it if I'd known it wasn't going to be bleeped. That's not a good one. That should be bleeped. How's that not allowed? How's that allowed? All right. So, Field, to answer your question.
Yes.
I would like to see him throw a real football. I think I'd want to see him compete. I'd want to see him look like Andrew Luck in a preseason game. You know what I mean? Like, you're about to look. He needs to play preseason games, and candidly, to Stefania's point, it's been almost 2 years, right? He needs to play it can't be the Ben Roethlisberger. I'm going to do one series, in game 3 of the preseason and I'm done. He needs to play full halves. He should play all of week 3 in the preseason. Frankly, I think
I don't think you're going to get that.
That's my thing.
I know.
I don't think you're going to get that, and I think that.
Well, Frank Reich listens to this podcast. I know he does. I'm sure he does. So I'm telling you, Coach, you need he needs to get hit. He needs to get hit and get back up. He needs to see game action.
Listen to me.
Fine, I'll listen to you.
He is not. They are not going to expose him to that much injury potential in the preseason. You can just put that aside. That's not going to happen. So understand that part of what you are going to have to decide when you draft for fantasy is, have you seen enough to be comfortable with where he's going to be? You will not get a full game. I don't believe. I could be wrong, but I don't believe you will get that. And then week 1, which is why I say that I believe that it's going to be a month of him playing in games before you see him reacclimated to a game. The same conditions, the adrenaline of a live game, the way opponents are coming at you that is not even matched in the preseason, and the fatigue factor of playing 4 quarters. And I think he'll be great again, but not right away.
So the one thing I'll say, so I ranked him 10th. Okay. And so, and I think of any ranking I have, the Andrew Luck ranking will fluctuate the most between now and the start of the season.
Sure, I think that's fair.
I'm just I'm gonna own that.
I follow Andrew Luck on Twitter, and just because it made me feel like I could trust him. The last tweet that he had said, "Dearest mother, I write with exuberance.
Okay.
Today, for the first time after many sunrises, I fired my sidearm in full view of onlookers.
Right.
It was a sight, I admit. Some were startled. The unit has a grueling campaign that inches closer daily. I shall be ready. I love you, Andrew."
Very good.
I mean, if that did not make
for that update,
you can follow him at Captain Andrew at CAPT Andrew Luck. That is his official Twitter account.
That's his verified Twitter account.
That is Andrew Luck's.
It's so good.
It's a picture.
It's actually
of him.
the oldest Twitter account in the history of the universe. His avatar was taken circa 1912.
Been going around since like the Civil War, but
I think one thing that's
by the way,
important to note here.
I don't know who runs that account, but whoever does a great job.
They're
with
so
it.
good.
That's
It is not, and to be clear, it is not Andrew Luck's official account.
His Twitter account is a book club account. Seriously, I think it's the AL book club is where he
That's right.
Like him or somebody who's associated with him runs a Twitter account for that. In any event,
wow, that sounds fucking nerdy, and I dig it. I'm all into the nerdy stuff. Here's the reason I have him ranked 10th, Fields, is that I believe, look, the last 2 seasons he was healthy. Guy's a top 4 fantasy quarterback. So the potential upside of Andrew Luck for me is worth the roll of the dice because, and I think you can take that roll of the dice because the position is so deep. Right. As you sit here and you look at ADP and who's going after QB 15, like guys like Matt Ryan are going that late. And guys that we think have potentially big upside, and like, Patrick Mahomes or Marcus Mariota or Mitchell Trubisky are going that late. So I feel like it is worth the gamble on Andrew Luck at that stage.
I think most likely if you're going to draft Andrew Luck, you have to pair him with the second quarterback back, because I understand you saying there's depth and you can just figure it out on the fly. But if we've only seen Andrew Luck in inconsequential plays during the preseason, like, I don't know that you're going to walk into week 1 and say, you know something, I am implicitly confident starting him.
You're definitely not going to feel confident having him as your QB1. I get that. You're not going to.
I have it reflected in that I have him quarterback 12, not way outside of my like clear-cut starting quarterbacks, but close enough to understand why there's upside, but also far enough outside of it to say, like, hey, I'd feel more comfortable with a Matthew Stafford type as my starting quarterback going into the season.
Fair enough. The other thing I will say here is, so we recently took place in a mock draft.
We did, yes.
We also took part in one.
Yeah. You guys were along. You guys somehow weaseled your way in.
But you said we took place.
Did we? What?
We took part.
You know what? Seriously, Princeton. Like, no one wants the grammar police.
Is there going to be anything left in this podcast?
I know. I love it.
I can say that at least, right, to her?
I don't think so.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
God. All right. All right. So anyway, but the reason I bring this up is so you can check out the entire draft on ESPN.com. Of course, I'm a company man.
I'm so busy writing down things I have to bleep, I don't even know where the button is. I'm sorry.
Nailed it.
So good.
Good job there, Secret Squirrel. So you can check it out on ESPN.com. The mock draft, worth noting, did take place prior to the announcement that Jameis Winston was facing a potential 3-game suspension, that we are reporting that. So in the mock draft, in addition to Field Yates, in addition to Stefania Bell and myself, our friends Eric Carabell, Matt Bowen, Tom Carpenter, he's a editor for ESPN Fantasy here, our buddy Jim McCormick, of course, Mike Clay, the football scientist J.C. Joyner, and Tristan H. Cockcroft. So a bunch of very talented fantasy football players. And the reason it's a good segue here, Field, because Mike Clay took Andrew Luck as QB9.
Correct.
He was the 9th quarterback going, but I will say, it was in the 12th round.
Yep.
Quarterbacks always last late, especially with our group.
Yep.
We're a wait on quarterback group. And it was in the 12th round pick, 114 QB9. But worth noting, it was Mike's second quarterback. Right. To your point, Mike only took him as a flyer. I forget who Mike got as a quarterback, but it was somebody very good.
Probably Carson Wentz.
No, I took Carson Wentz, which, I think that would be, we can discuss that later, but that's reflective
in any
sort
event,
of where I
Mike
feel
took
about
two quarterbacks, the second of which was Andrew Luck. Just a couple of other cliff notes from that first mock draft, by the way, and I'll let each one of us. I had the first overall pick in the draft. So for those who are wondering, what would I do if I had the first overall pick in the draft?
He took, just for the record, he took Cam Newton as, I think, QB7. He took Cam Newton in the 10th round, pick 94, QB7. So, and then he paired Cam with Andrew Luck.
All right, so let's move over to some other highlights from this draft. And because I had the first pick, I will mention a couple of things from me. First, I went with Le'Veon Bell off the bat. And then on the opposite side of this draft, and we said, by the way, that this was before the Jameis Winston news, I ended up with Mike Evans at the back end of round 2, shoehorning with Christian McCaffrey and Kenyon Drake. So I get 3 running backs in my first 4 picks, which is decidedly different than Matthew, who had the 10th pick in the draft.
Do you, real quickly about your team, any concern about Kenyon Drake? Because he makes me nervous this year.
A little bit, yeah, for sure. I mean, the fact that they not only drafted Kalen Ballage, but also signed Frank Gore to a 1-year deal in free agency. Yeah. I have concerns about them going all in on Kenyon Drake. At the same time,
he's your third running back.
He's my third running back, and there's so much wide receiver depth this, just like many other years, that like if Drake is not my flex week to week, I have very good options at wide receiver.
And it is worth noting it's a 10-team PPR league.
Yep.
So yeah, I ended up going 0 RB, and
not by design.
Not by design. It's just, but I'm a big player. I'm a big believer in best player available. Take what the draft brings you. And so I was sitting there at pick 10. I had picked 10 in a 10-team league. Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, and Odell Beckham Jr. are all there in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Not bad.
You know what? And again, if this draft were a month from now, I might have drafted slightly differently. Beckham still makes me a little bit nervous. It was splitting hairs. All of them are awesome, but the best running back available to me was Melvin Gordon, and there's nothing wrong with Melvin Gordon or Leonard Fournette, but I just thought Michael Thomas and Julio Jones together are pretty tough to beat as a 1-2 punch in wide receiver, and I thought, you know what, I'll figure it out at running back later. But with Julio, Thomas, and Beckham, I just thought I need to go wide receiver here.
Stefania, you had the 4th pick, and you were the first person in this draft to take a wide receiver. No surprise with who you went with first.
Yeah, it was just because, like Matthew said, I'm a big believer in best player on the board, and not by numbers on the board. Best player for me in terms of what I'm trying to put together. And it's actually a toss-up. I love DeAndre Hopkins this year. I really do. I could see a scenario where I might even prefer him, but I wanted to go with Antonio Brown. I really wanted David Johnson, but I knew Matt Bowen would snag him.
Yep.
So.
Which he did.
You guys know how I feel about that. But yeah, and then I went running backs in the next 2 rounds. So I took the Leonard Fournette that Matthew Berry passed up, and followed him with...
And you have no concerns about Fournette and his health, who last year got a little bit dinged up, was a little bit dinged up in college. They've rested him some, trying to get to the playoffs. No concerns on him health-wise.
Not immediate concerns.
Other than the concern that you just drafted him, then
right.
ultimately
well, of course,
cursing him.
I would obviously put him at increased risk, but no, here's the thing. All running backs to me carry inherent, there are a few that carry more than others because of a particular history, but running back is the riskiest position. By the time we get to the start of the season, 1 or 2 of the top 10 will potentially be lost for the year. I mean, this happens every year, right? And how many, for me, was about stacking good running backs who are going to provide value in a PPR league. My next pick, I took Jerick McKinnon because I really believe he's going to be a huge value in PPR.
I like your field running backs are good as well. McCaffrey, Kenyon Drake, who makes me a little, but you also picked up Nyheim Hines, who I like a lot. They're using him all over the field in practice so far. And I spoke to Hines at the rookie premiere and asked him point blank, have they talked to you about your role on this offense? And he got a big smile and says, oh yeah, I'm the Darren Sproles. He says, Coach Reich has already told me I'm going to be Darren Sproles in his offense. And we know how creatively Coach Reich used him in Philadelphia 2 years ago. Obviously, Sproles injured most of last year, but 2 years ago, Darren was actually their goal line back at times in Philadelphia.
No, he was.
So I like the pick a lot there. Field. Again, Drake makes me a little bit nervous, but I actually like Stefania's running backs the best. She has Fournette, McKinnon, Dion Lewis, and Devontae Booker, who I should have got. We'll talk about that in 1 second. But if I may just continue on with sort of like what ended up happening. So I'm sitting there, and I'm on the wraparound. So I'm pick 10. So I go Julio and Michael Thomas. Again, Beckham makes me slightly nervous. We'll see what happens a month from now. But, is he going to hold out? Is anything goofy going to happen? Want to see him fully healthy, et cetera, et cetera. Then we get back down to the end of round 3, and a lot of those running backs that I'd hoped might fall, McKinnon, Devontae Freeman, Christian McCaffrey, don't make it back to me. So I'm looking at the best running back available to me at the end of round 3, Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Derrick Henry, Jordan Howard, and just none of them. And I thought, well, there's Zach Ertz just sitting there, one of the best tight ends. And obviously I'm going back to back. So I took Zach Ertz and Tyreek Hill. And by the way, in my, and later on I got Devin Funchess. So I have three top 15 wide receivers. I have Tyreek Hill inside my top 15, 3 top 15 wide receivers, and 4 top 25 wide receivers once you add Funchess. And I thought, you know what, Field? You can always trade one of those wide receivers. Again, it's all about taking what the draft brings you. I can trade one of those wide receivers if I need to and trade for some running back depth, but I just took a lot of different running backs, thinking some of them will pop, and I'll just very quickly tell you my running backs, and you tell me what you think of my running backs.
We're getting very specific on Matthew's thinking throughout this mock draft.
Well, because I went very different, I think, than, for the most part, the draft is, and you can look at it at ESPN.com,
right,
but the draft is fairly standard. It's 10 people who know what they're doing, and it kind of went as you might expect. Royce Freeman, Ronald Jones, so not taking a running back until round 5. These are the running backs I round up with. Royce Freeman, Ronald Jones, Marshawn Lynch, Marlon Mack, Isaiah Crowell, Kalen Ballage, and Corey Clement.
Kalen Ballage is going to be who was the running back that we can never decide how to pronounce his name last year until like halfway through the season?
I have been told it is Ballage. I've been told by people from Arizona.
There's a Bellagio joke to make in there, right?
and Keith is holding up a thumbs up. From people that followed him in Arizona State, I've been told it is Ballage.
Okay, so Ballage. Yeah, I mean, Matthew, I understand, like, you've got depth, and invariably one or two of those is likely to hit. But the lack of certainty at running back is where I am concerned, which, of course, is going to happen when you go zero RB strategy. We've talked.
Shout out, by the way, and I like to give a quick shout out here. The people that created the zero RB theory, that popularized that term, my friend Sean Siegel, who writes over at RotoViz.
Okay,
they do great work at RotoViz, and they're part of RotoPass, which I own. You guys should know that. RotoPass.com.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, well, no, whatever. But I want to be clear that it's not a plug, but I also I have a business relationship with them. But anyway, one of the reasons I have a business relationship with them is because they're really smart guys over there at RotoViz. So I like them a lot. But anyway, Marshawn Lynch is a starting running back. Marlon Mack could be a starting running back. I think Isaiah Crowell has the best part of that Jets running back. I like Ballage, and Corey Clement is obviously, I think, somebody that could potentially do good things. Jay Ajayi has struggled with injuries in his career as well.
Let's get to some of these quick-hitting nuggets over the past handful of weeks.
Should we play that award-winning feature that I created, News or Noise?
Let's do it, Matthew. You did a great job creating that. Your ingenuity is probably one of your greatest strengths. News or Noise time. I don't know if we have a drop for that. Do we, Daniel?
No,
we don't.
Sure don't. That's why I don't know why Matthew called for it, because one never existed.
I got it. Hang on, I'll do it. It's time for fucking News or Noise.
Oh, God. That was the worst thing ever.
All right, here we go. Moving on. News or noise. Robert Turbin is getting reps. That comes from Stephen Holder of IndyStar.com. Is this news or noise?
This is noise.
Okay. Robert Turbin.
Because he's not good.
Right.
He's hashtag not good at football. There's a reason he's bounced around the league here. Marlon Mack, the offseason shoulder surgery, not practicing with the team. My expectation is he will be the starting running back. Look, could it be a committee? Probably more a committee than we like. I think Mack gets the majority of the work there, but I don't think they want to commit to him. I think you'll see some Jordan Wilkins. You'll see enough Turbin to be annoying, right? And then I already talked earlier on the show, Nyheim Hines. Right. I think Nyheim Hines is going to be involved a lot more than people think. Maybe not running the ball as much. They're going to use him a bunch of different ways in the passing game. And Mack needs to improve his pass protection. I think and I have him ranked low because I do think there's going to be a committee piece, but I believe the Colts running back you'll want at the end of the year will be Marlon Mack.
I think it could be Marlon Mack, who's currently, as we know, dealing with that shoulder issue. I think it could be Nyheim Hines. We just talked about it a minute ago.
Yeah.
But the point is that much in the same way that we don't think that Josh McCown will start all 16 games this year at quarterback for the Jets, Robert Turbin may be the starter at the beginning of the season, but he may not be the starter by the third week of the season.
I don't think he's going to be the starter by the third week of preseason. I think he's just getting a lot of reps because he's not a rookie and Marlon Mack isn't out there.
Been there, done that.
I think he's just
my
a guy.
cold sleeper this year is Deion Kane, their wide receiver out of Clemson.
Interesting.
More to discuss on that later.
Why is he your sleeper, real quick?
I just think he's a really talented dude who he is ready to compete in the NFL. There's a track record of very successful Clemson wide receivers. I think he's got a chance to be the next good one in that list.
I mean, after T.Y. Hilton, they have a lot of question marks, whether it's, Chester Rogers or they signed Ryan Grant. They have the rookie.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. Okay. Great offensive coordinator hire, Nick Sirianni, who used to be a wide receivers coach for the Chargers.
San Diego,
so it's that's certainly, I think, wide receivers should be well developed in Indianapolis now. Royce Freeman looks to be pushing Devontae Booker for that starting job. That headline comes from, I see it on Pro Football Talk, actually, which I'm assuming it is
sourced from somewhere.
From ESPN, actually, originally. The great Jeff Legwold covers the Broncos for us here at ESPN. News or noise, Matthew?
I'll tell you.
Stefan,
I'm just pipe up about this.
Go ahead, Stefan. You want to weigh in?
Can't really see each other.
Yeah, it's hard. We've got monitors.
Here.
Yeah,
we're in a different studio.
Yep.
We're in the off-season studio.
Yeah, we are. I've talked to quite a bit about Freeman and Booker and
name dropper.
Well, and you notice I took Devontae Booker very, very late round in our mock draft, and
I was annoyed at that. That was a mistake by me not to grab Booker once I grabbed Freeman,
because I think this is going to play out across all of training camp. What they like about Freeman is his athleticism in particular. Yeah, he's faster, he's more athletic than Booker, and they felt like Booker was faster and more athletic than C.J. Anderson. Booker is very good in pass protection. They trust him as a receiver. They have yet to decide how Freeman will play out. So I think they want them to push each other through camp, but that's sort of the assessment on the Broncos side of the two of them, and I think it's going to go deep into camp. Remember, Booker was, because they liked him last year, they really projected him as the starter till he had that wrist injury that took him out.
Except I just don't think Booker's any good, Field. And I know it's not my choice to make.
Yep.
I don't get a vote here, but just when I watch tape on Booker, I don't see, you see the explosiveness, but, I also see I feel like poor decision making with him. And, I don't, he's not a particularly big guy or anything like that. Royce Freeman is, 6 foot, 238. He is a definition workhorse running back, over 250 touches in 3 out of his 4 college seasons there at Oregon. He had double-digit touchdowns all 4 years, at least 19 carries in each of his final 5 games for the Ducks. John Elway, when he drafted, really referred to him as a workhorse, a true workhorse 3-down back. I think with Case Keenum under center, they're going to be an improved team this year. Obviously, the defense is still really good as well. So they're going to want a grinder, somebody to, they want to be a run-first team. And they want to be a conservative team. I don't know. Give me Freeman. I'm just not a Booker fan.
I do a piece each summer that sorts through crowded backfield. So the Broncos will be one of the teams I'll look at. The Browns, the Patriots, the Packers. So some of these teams, you don't know for sure who the starter will be. And my conclusion on the Broncos is that I think, Royce Freeman is clearly the running back that you want to draft for a lot of the reasons you just laid out. And it starts with this, Matthew. As you mentioned, I'm not sold on Devontae Booker. He's an average player. 61 catches through 2 seasons. That part is pretty nice, but does not run for many yards per carry, does not create any explosive yards after contact, and he came into the league as an older rookie. I don't know that this is the kind of player that hits that stride in the year 3 or whatever it is, because of the fact that he entered at I think 23 or 24 years old. Let's get to Randall Cobb, actually. Go there, because Randall Cobb has reportedly tweaked his ankle wearing a walking boot. Now, the report, which I believe comes from PackersNews.com, is that correct? Maybe not. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel says it won't likely keep him out for the week 1 of the season. But Stefano, should we be concerned about this?
Yeah, we are always concerned when a player is dealing with an
I think
injury.
This is news, by the way.
Yeah.
You are rusty.
News or noise?
By the way, thank you. You're super rusty. I mean, it's like you create a segment. I personally, all by myself, create this amazing segment, and it's just like, can't somebody read a memo about how to execute it? That's all I'm asking. Somebody read a memo. Somebody show up to rehearsal. That's all I'm asking. Secret squirrel. Is that allowed? Can I say that?
No.
Interesting.
But you only have 4 minutes left of the podcast, and there's a lot more you wanted to talk about.
I think this is news. I think this walking boot is news, Stefania.
Agreed. And now I'll get back to what I was starting to say, which is that when you have a player who comes and you see an injury, especially lower extremity injury, and we're talking this late, we're late June, we're almost to July, and you're just discovering this injury. Remember Jordan Reed, completely different injury, was his foot, but he showed up to training camp and had a problem and then was never really quite right. I am concerned about this problem manifesting itself at this stage. Might he be ready for week 1? Sure, but you're going to have to prove a lot to me through the course of training camp to make sure that he really is indeed past the issue he's dealing with.
So maybe an upgrade to Jimmy Graham.
I don't want to say this is good news. It's never good news when a player is injured. But Randall Cobb was on the periphery here, right? Like, he was a late-round flyer at best, wide receiver 40 in consensus ranks. It might further the value, though, of other players if he is not ready for week 1. We know Devontae Adams is going to be a stud in this offense. He of a new contract and incredible pedigree. But you think the Jimmy Graham could be the beneficiary here?
It may be sort of the middle of the field. I mean, Geronimo Allison gets maybe a little bit of a bump. They've got some other rookies out there. We'll see who emerges. They drafted, I think, 3 rookie wide receivers. And so those guys are all going to compete for playing time. But for me, especially with Rodgers, and it's so much about trust and timing, I think Geronimo Allison gets a slight bump if Randall Cobb were to miss time, as does Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, I think it comes out of this. It might open up a roster spot early on in the season for one of those intriguing developmental wide receivers in Green Bay. One last piece of news here to try to get to is, and I'm not sure it means that much, news or noise perhaps, for Terrence West signing with the New Orleans Saints, who of course will not have Mark Ingram for the first 4 weeks of the season.
I think it's noise. I think, look, I get wanting to have depth there, but they've got a lot of guys there. It's going to be Alvin Kamara. I can't imagine. Look, you're not starting Terrence West week 1.
Yep.
Because you need to see how he would play and how he fits into it. And depending on how he goes, I mean, the fact of the matter is that you're going to have a full complement. You're not going to hit by the time Mark Ingram comes back, that's when the bye starts. So I just can't imagine ever starting Terrence West. I mean, we'll see what injuries happen and if he suddenly gets a ton of work. I just don't think I think Alvin Kamara gets the majority of the work for the Saints, and I don't think they're going to be as run heavy. We've talked with Mike Triplett, our friend Mike Triplett, who covers the Saints for us here at ESPN, does a great job. We've talked to him about this, and he thinks that the run heavy balance that they were last year was a little bit of a fluke. They still want to run the ball, but there's no way Drew Brees throws 23 touchdowns again. He's going to be over 30 again this year.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think that Terrence West is not even a flyer. Just pass. Again, at the end of the draft, I'd much rather swing for the fences on a player who might actually start. One of those young Colts running backs who could emerge as a weekly starter as opposed to a guy.
Wilkins. Kalen Ballage, my boy Kalen Ballage.
Kalen Ballage. Last piece of news here. Deontay Foreman, Texas running back because of an Achilles injury, may not be ready for week 1. News or noise, and this might tie more to Lamar Miller than Deontay Foreman himself.
I think the news is legit in the sense that he...
So I'm going to say news. I'm going to answer the question, Stefania. Again, am I the only one that shows up for rehearsal?
I did answer the question. I answered the damn question. I said...
No.
You answered the question.
I said...
You answered for that kind of language, Stefania.
News.
No. The first word out of your mouth is either news or noise, and it wasn't the first. Go run back the tape.
Our audience is smart enough to know if I put news as the 5th word, that's what it is.
The audience likes me. They're not smart at all. Are you kidding me? Come on. You can disagree with both those statements, by the way.
Okay.
Torn left Achilles.
The audience, A, is smart, and B, the audience doesn't like you, Barry. All right.
Torn left Achilles in November. Staying in Houston for rehab. Unclear if he'll be ready for week 1.
So that probably further solidifies Lamar Miller's standing as a starting running back in Houston that won't have a job, job security issues at the beginning of the season. Some people have felt like it was just a matter of time. Lamar Miller has been solid for Houston, but has not been a breakout player like some expected him to be.
Worth noting that from weeks 2 through 8 last year, the Deshaun Watson era, Lamar Miller was running back 14, averaged over 15 fantasy points a game in the 6 games that Deshaun Watson started. And he's going outside running back 20 in ADP. I mean, most people are like, Lamar Miller, and I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I have him ranked there too, but honestly, this does, again, we don't like to, it's never good news when a player suffers an injury, but there is no question that Lamar Miller, who's outside my top 20, does get a bit of a boost here. I believe this is news with Foreman, a promising young player that we all liked last year. And, it's disappointing that he's being slow to recover from the injury last year.
It's good to be back with you guys. A lot to get to, or a lot that we got to, I should say, today. Reminders. At the beginning of the show, we announced we were coming back July 30th on a daily version, live streamed on Twitter. Plus, we have shows. Live variety. I guess we have to distinguish because every day is live. We have shows on the road in New York and Los Angeles. Keep an eye on that. We'll give you more information. But if you live on the West Coast, it's
and
soon.
The Jimmy V Foundation.
Yes.
Go to ebay.com/
ebay.com/ESPN for the V Foundation, which of course supports the fight against cancer.
Get your league together. Everyone pool some money. This is going to be a very, very cool experience. And of course, you can go to gonffc.com to see Fields, Stefania, myself, Melvin Gordon, Kareem Hunt, LaShawn McCoy, Ezekiel Elliott, and over 200 other NFL players, a lot of other great fantasy experts as well. Going to be a great time in Fort Worth, Texas, July 13th through the 15th. GoNFFC.com, and you can use the promo code either Yates or Barry. They both work, and get you some get some points, some money off your discount.
And if you
go get a discount off your price.
If you can't do that, then I will be at the Farmington IHOB because I will not be at NFFC. IHOB. Yes. If you want to come.
Good. Look, my wife is calling.
There we go.
Oh, great.
Hi, honey. You're on the air. I'm doing a podcast like I told you.
I thought you'd be done by now.
Yeah, we all thought that, worry. Beth. Don't worry.
Good God, it's been like 2 hours.
I know. Well, Matthew won't stop talking. Beth, you know how that goes.
Yes, I do. Believe me.
All right. I'll call you later, honey.
Actually, Stefania, between you two, I can't believe you guys could even, be done within, 5 hours.
That's all right. We are little chatty Cathys. Yeah. So you want to say goodbye to your best friend, Stefania Bell?
Yes, I do. Bye, best friend. I'll talk to you later.
Bye, best friend. We'll plan a date soon.
Yes, I can't wait.
Okay.
See ya.
There you go. All right. That's my
Better
wife.
Barry right there.
Yes.
In the meantime, find us all on social media. Matthew is Matthew Barry TMR everywhere except for the Fantasy Life app. He's just Matthew Barry. Stefania is Stefania_ESPN on Twitter and Stefania B87 on Instagram. I am Field Yates. Plenty of fun ahead over the summer. Follow us all there for our adventures. We're back in July, some point, with more fantasy content.
Peace out.